There are going to be times that you're going to want to use a character or a symbol that's not readily available on your keyboard. What's more, you might want to use a symbol that's actually reserved for use by HTML that you're really not supposed to use. For example, using the left or right angle brackets in your content could actually cause rendering errors. So if you want to use those special characters, you're going to have to use something that's called a named character entity. And in order to explore those, we're going to be using the special.htm file found in the 03_06 directory. And I have this page open, and you can see right off the bat that there's a potential problem with it. Brackets does a really nice thing. Whenever it finds what it thinks to be an error in code, it gives me this little warning by code coloring the text red. And the potential problem is this angle bracket right here that we're using in the text. If a browser or other user agent sees this, it's probably going to assume that we wanted to start opening a tag and just didn't finish it. That could lead to syntax errors, validation problems, and even rendering errors. Now, if I look at this page in the browser, I can see that it's rendering okay, but that's just because Chrome is being extra nice to me at the moment. That's definitely not something you want to try to get away with. So let's talk about displaying special characters, and the text that I have here for you on the page describes it pretty well. So as I mentioned, using the left angle bracket can cause rendering issues, but we have also other characters that are available to us that you can't really type through a keyboard. So something like the trademark symbol or the copyright symbol. Maybe it's something that's used by other languages or something like that. So that's where we turn to named character entities. Now, these are special codes that browser user agents will recognize them and then replace them with the character that you need. The syntax for them is really, really straightforward. We start with an ampersand, then we followed by using the named entity itself, and then we follow that with a semicolon. Let's go take a look at that. So if I go back into my code, I can replace this left angle bracket with an ampersand. So we always start with an ampersand. And then I'm going to type in LANG. Now, how do I know to type that in? Well, I just happen to know what the named character entity is for left angle bracket. So these are some of the things that you're just either going to have to know or have a reference handy. And I'm going to show you at the very end of this that I've got a nice link for a reference for you. So there is ampersand LANG semicolon. If I save this, go back to the browser, I can see that it doesn't really render any differently. But what's nice about that is the browser is recognizing that named character entity and replacing that text with the actual symbol that we want. Now, sometimes it's easy to do, and sometimes it takes a little bit of work. Let me scroll down, and in the second paragraph below that, you'll notice that we have some text here that says you start with an ampersand, then we display an ampersand, followed by the named entity that's followed by a semicolon. To display an ampersand, for example, you would type in ampersand. Well, that's not right at all. If I go back into the code, I can see I'm having problems. You can see that is the syntax for the named character entity for the ampersand. So there are two things here that I need to correct. One, I don't want just an ampersand here. You can see that's code colored red by brackets to let me know that that could be a problem. I'm going to replace that with the named character entity, which is ampersand AMP semicolon. All right, down here, I actually want this to display within the text. And in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow this named character entity, because remember, that's just displaying the ampersand, with the text AMP semicolon. So it kind of looks like I'm doing it twice, but bear with me. These are just individual characters, AMP semicolon. This is actually a named character entity, which will display the actual ampersand. So if I save this, go back in the browser and refresh this, you can see right there, I'm getting the text to display exactly the way that I want to. And here we still have our ampersand. Now, just so you can have a little bit more practice, let's take a look at the copyright and trademark symbols. So if I go through there, I want to replace this text with the actual symbols themselves. So I'm going to take copyright and replace that. So remember, we start with an ampersand, and then after that, the name of the named character entity. Now, a lot of these you could probably guess if you had to. So for this one, we're going to use copy and then a semicolon. For trademark, see if you can guess that. So ampersand trade. I'm guessing that most of you were able to guess that properly. So if I save that, go back in the browser, I can see indeed that I'm seeing my copyright and trademark symbols. So some of these are pretty self-explanatory. Some of them are easy for you to guess, but there are literally hundreds of them. So it's really difficult to keep track of all of them or have them all memorized. That's why it's nice to have a little reference. And I've given you a link here to a page on Wikipedia where we have a list of XML and HTML character entities. If I scroll down, you see I have a really big table here of HTML character entities, and you can see the character that's displayed and the name of it. So to display quotation mark, for example, you would do ampersand, QUOT, and then a semicolon. So that's kind of how that works. And as I scroll through here, you can see how many of them there are, and there are a lot of them. So the hardest part of using these named character entities is, for the most part, remembering them. That's why it's a good reason to bookmark a page like this so that you can have a reference like this Wikipedia page handy while you're authoring your own HTML.